I'd like to introduce Saira Shah Halim, activist who's joining us on this broadcast. Saira, good evening. What's your response as a woman to this kind of a diktat that's come in, saying that, women together, woman who's not accompanied by a man cannot be allowed inside the Jama Masjid? And when we asked them further, when we prodded, they said it's because women resort to immoral acts inside the premises.
Yeah, so good evening. Firstly, it's an affront to life, dignity, and equality towards women because, I've traveled all over, whether it's Turkey, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's UAE. Islam does not prohibit Muslim women from entering the mosque. And it is very clear that, women are allowed to enter the premises. They might be having a separate entrance. However, there can be no notice that prohibits women from entering a mosque. And I think this notice is quite regressive and it is unconstitutional. And this needs to be questioned on what grounds are single women or women in a group being prohibited from entering the premises of one of the biggest and the grandest mosques in India. And I think it is an infringement of the right, because if you are giving that clause that women are meeting boys or taking selfies, the same thing can be said about the men as well. If men come in groups, they also might do the same. So you can't just single out women and say that you are prohibited because of some bad behavior or because of taking selfies. This is absolutely no excuse from prohibiting women from entering any mosque.
But, the question is, what does this really mean for women's rights as well, Saira? The fact that, we're taking 10 steps back with every one step that we take forward. And this is essentially a problem that we see in almost all religious places of worship, particularly, where almost always you'll see some sort of restriction against women devotees in particular.
Absolutely. Like when we look at Saudi Arabia, they are progressing as a country. I used to live in Saudi Arabia in the mid-90s, and those days abaya was compulsory, the hijab was compulsory. However, they are, moving a step forward. And we see here, things are only digressing, and we are just kind of regressing as a society, which is quite unfortunate. And I think we should hold a stellar example. And when we talk about equality, we shouldn't kind of be partisan, especially in places of worship. It is against the Places of Worship Act, A, and B, Islam nowhere prohibits women from entering a mosque.
I think the comparison of India versus Saudi Arabia, some viewers may say that that's not a fair comparison, but the message you're trying to put across, Saira, is clear. That while they seem to be at least changing, we are not doing that. We're changing for the worse if you look at these kind of instances. Saira Shah Halim, thank you very much for joining us here on India Today with your view on this particular story.